Please be seated. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the National Latent Print Examiner Training Academy graduation first session. My name is John Bird, and I'm the Director of Laboratory Services for Ron Smith and Associates, and also the Director of the Academy here. I'll be your host today. We expect the commencement to last approximately an hour. To start, I'd like to recognize some of our special guests today who have taken the time out of their busy schedules to attend the graduation here today. From our staff at Ron Smith and Associates, Joyce Williamson, Senior Administrative Specialist, Melanie Hogan, Training Registrar, Susan Hatcher, Finance Manager, Paula Reeves, Travel Coordinator, Heather McNeil, Director of Operations, Ken Storms, Contracts Manager, Megan Sheehan, Latent Print Examiner and Consultant, Matt Marvin, Latent Print Examiner, Technical Manager, and Senior Consultant, Lucas Hatcher, Web and Marketing Director, and Eric Zabinski, Photography and Latent Print Trainee. We would also like to thank all of our instructors listed in your program, some of which could not be here today, but without their expertise and dedication, we would not have been able to pull this off. From the Southern Regional Public Safety Institute, Captain Todd Stewart, Director, Nancy Everett, Senior Administrative Specialist. Thank you for your service and to our communities and for helping prepare our future officers. Captain Stewart, if you would, please pass along to Colonel Julian Allen and the rest of your staff for us. From Camp Shelby, Lieutenant Colonel Rick Weaver, and to all current military members that may be in attendance. A big thank you to you for your attendance here today and especially for your service to our country. Lieutenant Colonel Weaver, if you would, please pass along to Colonel Michelle as well. Thanks to both the SRPSI, or Southern Regional Public Safety Institute, and Camp Shelby for allowing us to use your facilities and for hosting this academy. It means a lot to have your support, and thank you for sharing time out of your schedule today to be here with the graduates. I also want to thank the agencies for entrusting us with your employees, and to the parents who have entrusted us with your loved ones. It means the world to us that you would trust us with preparing them for their future as latent print examiners, and I can promise you this, they're ready. Just a few short years ago, Ron Smith and Associates, on behalf of the United States Army Crime Laboratory, were tasked with training latent print examiners in a very different way. The question at hand, instead of the normal 2 years of required training, was could this same training be completed in an accredited or an accelerated fashion, that being 20 weeks. None of us knew if it could be done, but we were certainly willing to try, and we fast forward 20 weeks. Not only did we have students that surpassed the USACIL, or United States Army Criminal Investigation Laboratory, and Ron Smith and Associates expectations, but they also proved that the accelerated program could be done. This just goes to show that in order to progress, sometimes you have to be willing to try something different and push beyond the status quo. So fast forward 5 years, and our mission is the same. To take a 2-year training program and compress it into 20 weeks while maintaining top-notch instruction. And at the end of that program, to have examiners ready for supervised casework. By cutting the length of training, it saves the agency thousands of dollars in training per employee. Here's some of what they have accomplished in 5 months, 800 hours of training and instruction, and over 500,000 comparisons, which I'm sure they will tell you increased in difficulty as the academy progressed. These students were pushed and even shoved in some instances to progress to the next level that we were expecting by the end of the academy. During the presentation of the graduates, we do encourage you to express your pride by applauding, but if you would, please refrain from any air horns. Now, if you would, please rise for our invocation. At this time, I would like to ask Brother Rick Piggott of Wesley Southern Methodist Church in Hattiesburg to come lead us in our invocation.
Good afternoon. God's grace and peace to you, and congratulations to you who have graduated. I'd like to read a passage of Scripture. An invocation is about stopping for a moment and reflecting on God's grace to all of us and being thankful and praying for His grace as you continue to put into practice the things that you've learned here. A passage of Scripture that I came across comes out of Psalm 90 and verse 17. I'm reading from a Common English translation that says, "Let the kindness of the Lord our God be over us. Make the work of our hands last." Yes, make the work of our hands last. The New Living Translation makes it a little more pointed and applicable, I think. Make our efforts successful. Make our efforts successful. And so, Father, I pray that as we stand here in your presence, I pray that you will receive our gratefulness, our thanksgiving, and our praise to you for all the good things that you allow us to experience, the things that you allow us to learn, the things that you allow us to accomplish. Here are some graduates, Lord, that stand here before their family and friends and before you and instructors that are here. And Lord, you have allowed them to complete this course. You have given them the strength, you have given them the skills, you have given them the abilities, Lord, to participate and to accomplish the things that have been presented to them. We're reminded of the passage of Scripture that tells us all good things come from above, from the Father of lights. So I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your smile upon these participants and these graduates now. Father, as they prepare to go, and Father, with the accomplishment and with the knowledge and with the wisdom added to what they already knew, Father, I pray that you'll cause them to distinguish themselves in the various spheres, that you will scatter them and plant them. I pray that not only will they be the beneficiaries of the things that they have learned, but I also pray that others in the cities that they will be planted will also be the beneficiaries, Lord, of their training and their learning here. I thank you for their effort. I thank you for their time. And for all that they planted into this. I pray that there will be fruit now that will come from this. And I pray for Ron and all of those, Lord, who have planted into them. May there be tremendous success that comes, Lord, that serves their communities very, very well. All thanks and all praise be to you for the things that you provided to make it possible. For it's in the name of Jesus that we pray, and it's in his name that we say thank you, thank you, thank you. Amen.
And thank you, Brother Piggott. Now, if everyone would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. And now for our keynote speaker. Ron Smith has been employed in the forensic identification field since 1972, first with the FBI, then with the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, and from 1978 until his retirement in July 2002 as the Associate Director with the Mississippi Crime Laboratory. He has been certified by the International Association for Identification in Latent Prints and Crime Scenes and is the recipient of the Dedication to Service Award and the John A. Dondero Memorial Award, which is the highest award given by the International Association for Identification. He has lectured on courtroom testimony techniques, latent print examinations, or crime scene examination topics in over 40 states and several countries. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. He reads really good, don't he? But it is a pleasure to be with you here today, particularly when our first class sits before us now. It's been a dream come true. Maybe for them, I know it has been for me. But I asked a question of our graduates today. As you sit here, all decked out, looking so pretty and everything, do you see yourself as we do now? Maybe not. You know, you've been working so hard and for so long, you probably even haven't had a chance to take a breath just to see where you're at now. It's not like you were 5 months ago, I can assure you of that. Well, now that you will soon be getting your diploma and returning to the hinterlands, as we say, all over this country, what's the next few weeks going to bring? You know, what's going to happen? What's the challenges going to be when you get home? And are you going to be up to the task? Let's think about that for a second. Some of you are going to be asked to examine a bank robbery note, which you're excited about, I'm sure. Some of you are going to be given the duty of processing a trunk full of marijuana or cocaine, which is not exactly the best day you'll ever have. Okay. Some of you will be given the duty of processing evidence from a sexual assault of an elderly lady that was nearly beat to death. May not be glamorous, but it's important, very important. Some of you will be assigned to examine a stack of DVDs in a child pornography case, while others will be working burglaries of businesses or churches. Some of you are going to be tasked with conducting latent print examination on guns from all kinds of cases, whether it be murders, suicides, officer-involved shootings, whatever the case may be. And yes, some of you, and probably all of you, will be asked to help identify some unknown deceased that they found floating in a pond or a river near your home. That's the career you've chosen. Not easy, not pretty like it is on TV, but it's real, and it means so much to the communities that you serve. But you're also going to get a thrill from all of that. You know, I still get a thrill when I'm looking at latent prints, and as John noted, I've been around a long time looking at prints, and I still get just as excited when I identify a print as I ever have. I hope you have a career that's as much fun as mine has been. You get the thrill of identifying a partial bloody palm print on a murder weapon when the detective told you when they brought it in, there's not anything on here. But you prove them wrong. You're going to smile when you find that little bitty piece of a latent print that's on the back of a stamp that was put on an envelope that was mailed into the department agency with a ransom note inside. You know, one of those notes where they were so careful not to leave any prints on the note and so careful not to leave any prints on the envelope, but they forgot about the back of the stamp, but you didn't. If that don't turn you on, I don't know what does, okay? That's what we live for, is those kind of things. So it'll make you smile, sure it will. I hope it does. If it doesn't, something's wrong with you, you picked the wrong career. But the satisfaction that you get when you go through a stack of latent print lists from an armed robbery, and you know your crime scene team went out there and they slung powder all over everything, dusted everything, made 150 latent lifts. It's going to take you weeks to get through the thing, and you find that one little tiny fragment of the print that matches the suspect. You may have had to go through stacks of stuff that didn't matter, but that little one was worth it. Oh gosh, was it ever worth it. This business that we practice is full of a lot of difficult things, but it's also full of a lot of excitement and a lot of joy. For the last 20 weeks, not counting holidays, you've been trained by a group of very committed professional latent print examiners and instructors. They've tried to give you the very best they could. They come from far and wide that are employees of our company that come in and spend time with you, personal time with you, to share what they've learned through their experiences. They've challenged you, they've laughed with you, they've cried with some of you, they've prayed with some of you and prayed for you, I'm sure. But here's what they tell me, collectively. They say you're ready for this next big step. They say you're ready for this challenge. I believe it as well. And I don't easily pass out praise, I assure you. We believe in you as an individual and as a forensic scientist. It is a sincere belief. We have challenged you with our very best, and you've done all that we ask you to do, sometimes even more. I know John mentioned earlier that, they had to urge you along, and sometimes they had to shove you. There's a few of you who have bruises from us kicking you. But that's okay too. You did what we asked you to do. We've taught you the science behind latent prints. Oh Lord, have we spent time teaching you science. But more importantly, we've taught you about the people that live behind those case numbers and those exhibit numbers that you're going to see in your daily work. This is not about science. It's never been about science. It's about people and us serving people using science. And that's what we've tried to teach you. Lives will forever be touched. When you get home, you're going to immediately start touching lives that will forever be different because of your involvement in that case. That's what you do. That's who you are. That's what you should be. Because all lives do matter. They truly do. I don't think any of you will ever forget Benaiah Alton Dandridge. For those of you that don't know, they may have told you about this, but I'll share just a little bit of the case with you. Murder took place in Montgomery, Alabama, a little over 20 years ago. Excuse me. And there was 2 bloody fingerprints, actually 3. They were found on a wallboard very close to where the victim who had been murdered was lying. The police department there collected photographs and actually cut out part of that wallboard, and it eventually ended up at the State Bureau of Investigation located there in Montgomery. They had a named potential suspect, and they carried the fingerprint card up there to the State Bureau, where I used to work, actually. These were my friends that were assigned to the case. I had long since left and come home to Mississippi. But this case was examined by them, and they really just didn't do the case justice. For whatever reason. And I don't know, it wasn't because of bias or anything. I think they just made a serious mistake and failed to back up on it. They incorrectly identified Mr. Dandridge's prints as being those on that wallboard next to the victim. He was arrested. A little bit later, a jailhouse snitch said, yeah, he told me he killed him, yeah. They made a deal with the snitch to lessen his sentence, and he was carried to trial and convicted. This goes on and on and on. The appellate process goes through, and those fingerprints always got in the way. I'm telling this story to y'all because he told it to them. They got to hear it from his own lips. But the appellate process wouldn't work because the appellate court was saying, but I don't care what you say, these bloody fingerprints, you can't do away with them, they were there. Years passed, many years passed. He finally had his case taken up by a company, a law firm in Montgomery that does what the equivalent of an innocent project case. They take cases where they think people have been convicted wrongfully. And they took this case, and realizing that the focal point was the prints, they called us at our office up in Collinsville. And I told them, I said, we could we could work the case for you. Yes, that's what we do. We do a lot of case work for whether it be law enforcement or defense attorneys. It doesn't matter to us what the question is. The answer is going to be the same, so it doesn't matter who we work for. And I agreed to do the case as a company. I wasn't going to be working it myself because I thought there might be a conflict of interest since I had worked at the agency many years ago, back in the 70s, and I didn't want there to be any perception of malfeasance in any way. So Matt Marvin, one of our instructors for these students, worked the case, and we did it pro bono, you know, not knowing what kind of case it was going to be or how long it was going to take. It took many, many, many months. But finally, we were able, through Matt's work, to convince the State Bureau of Investigation to seriously look at the case again. Now, the people who had worked the case had either passed away or retired. So these are newer examiners that were over there now. And after a little bit of shoving and pushing in different ways, Matt was able to get them to seriously look at what he had marked up on the prints to show them why this was a mistake. Not only was Matt able to determine that the bloody prints were not those of Mr. Dandridge, he was able to identify whose prints they were, which turned out to be the son of the victim who had discovered the body and got blood on his hands when he did, and told the officers he touched the wall, but they never bothered to check his. And Mr. Dandridge still sitting in prison all this time. His wife passes away, he's in prison. His mom passes away, he's in prison. His son, who was used to be brought to him a lot, eventually faded away. He lost his family, he lost everything. And eventually, after all this was come to a head, and the State Bureau of Investigation agreed to relook at the case, and they issued a report that said this was wrong. Our agency made a serious mistake 20 years ago. Finally, they let Benaiah Alton Dandridge out of prison. We brought him over. Matt brought him over a couple of weeks ago. They didn't know he was coming. And he got a chance to talk to them about what it's like to serve 20 years in prison for a crime you did not commit. It was one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my entire career or my life. What was probably the most amazing part of it to them as well was that he had forgiven everybody that had wronged him. But he showed these students something I hope they never forget, and I never will. This is not about case numbers. This is about people. That's the way it's supposed to be. It's interesting enough, I see a lot of these folks up here now are Facebook friends with it. So thank you for doing that. That means a great deal to him. It means a great deal to all of us too, that you cared enough to say, you know, this man shared something with me. I think I'll be a Facebook friend with him. People see that kind of stuff, and I thank you for it. Well, you know, when you look at what some of these people have seen and done, you figure that's, you know, you close the case file and that's the end of it. But I want to tell them the rest of the story that some of them just don't know about. During the trial, when Mr. Daniels was convicted, there was an old gentleman from down in Pensacola. Well, he wasn't old, he's about my age then. And he was retired FBI latent print examiner, and he had been hired by the defense to look at the print before it went to trial. He did look at the prints. He was willing to testify that these were not the prints of Benaiah Dandridge and that the State Bureau of Investigation was wrong. And he testified to that very fact in a court of law in Montgomery. But he was a FBI guy. You know, he wasn't from Montgomery. They called him every name in the book while he was sitting up there in that courtroom, up to and including a really bad name. Okay. But that being said, he went home to Pensacola, never worked another case for the defense. And it's been on my heart ever since Benaiah came and said, you know, that old man never knew that somebody else vindicated him. He didn't know, and he needed to know. So I decided I'm going to find him. right? And I've been looking for him for months. I mean, he disappeared off of, and I'm pretty good on the internet, as y'all well know, okay? But I couldn't find him. I found his last known address in Pensacola, but nothing for years. And I'm going through Pensacola tomorrow morning, and I decided I was just going to go early, and I'm going to find this man. His name was Mervyn Smith. Now, you don't think Smith's so hard to figure out and find? He ought to be one. But anyhow, that being said, a couple of days ago, I said, you know, I'll give it one more shot on the internet to see if I can find him, so I don't have to drive all over Pensacola. I got on the internet and I couldn't find him, but I found, there's 200-something Mervyn Smiths in Florida, by the way. But I found one that had some children, and I checked on the children who were fully grown and found out where all they had lived in their life. And there was one, just one, who had shown that he lived in Pensacola and he lived in Woodbridge, Virginia. That may not mean much to you, but it does to an ex-FBI guy. That's where half the FBI lives, is in Woodbridge. So I'm thinking, what's the odds of a guy named Smith living in Woodbridge, Virginia and Pensacola, Florida? So I found out his phone number and I called him. And it was Mervyn's son. Out of all those people, it was the right one. I asked him about his dad, see if he was still alive. Yeah, he's alive, 85 years old. He's in a nursing home. And I said, well, can I go see him? He said, well, it wouldn't do any good because he really didn't recognize anybody anymore. But he said, could you tell me about the story? And I told him the whole thing. And he didn't get in tears, but he was almost. And he didn't know about the case. And I'm surprised. I'm not surprised because he was fully grown when his dad came home from Montgomery after the trial. And after being called all those names, I probably wouldn't have shared it with anybody anyhow. But he did tell me that they were going to have a family meeting that night with his brother and his sister and his mother, who was 78, and he was going to find out if she knew about the case or if Mervyn had ever talked to her. See, there's always people behind this stuff. The book never closes on these things. But our job is to remember that there are people, and there'll always be people by the work that you do. Now, when you get back to work, you got all this newfound knowledge. Walk softly, okay? Don't carry a big stick, just walk softly, okay? Don't get in there and say, hey, let me tell you what RS&A taught me. We're doing stuff the wrong way. No, Nanette, don't do that, okay? Just be careful. If you just keep your mouth shut, do what they want you to do, and then as you get a little bit longer in there, they're going to start asking you about things you learned, and then you're going to get a chance to bring it up, okay? I know how law enforcement works. I've been around criminal justice my whole career. You have so much to share, but you don't have to do it all in the first week, okay? Give them a little time. Give them a little time. Also, I want you to remember that you are the future of our profession. You are going to be the group that's going to be committee chairman, board members of professional organizations that we all belong to. You are going to be the leaders in the IAI. You're going to be the ones who are speaking at conferences and teaching others. You know, that is your job. I always tell people, if you know it, you owe it to show it. But you got to do it with humility and with fun. If you do that, they'll come to hear what you got to say. They'll listen to you. A couple of weeks ago, I was over in Atlanta, lecturing at the U.S. Army Crime Lab that John mentioned in his opening remarks. And I'm out there looking at all these students, and I see in the group a lot of those students that he talked about us training several years ago. Right out of college, I mean, not even good wet behind the ears. And they were in that class getting ready for their third deployment to Afghanistan. Two of them going over as team leaders, as laboratory managers of a mobile field. It happens immediately. This week, I had a chance to travel down to West Palm Beach, Florida, where I was lecturing. And I got a chance to sit down with the Latent Print Unit in a very fine department. West Palm Beach is a great department. But they have 6 latent print examiners and 1 supervisor. And the crime lab director asked me, what do you think about our unit here? And I said, well, you got more experience than you can imagine. She said, oh, yep, we got over 200 years experience in this room right here. Where do you think we're going to be in 5 years? And I said, well, in terrible shape, if you even exist, because they didn't have people like you. Where does all that experience go when they retire? Out the door. So although she was proud of her unit, and she should have been, she's that close from not having anybody to serve the citizens of that county. I had to remind her of that a little bit. Hopefully she'll listen. Hopefully she will. Why is that comparison between those two groups so important? Well, because the demand for people that know what you know is greater now than it's ever been in the history of forensic science. You say, well, why now? Because the baby boomers are retiring. My generation is either already retired or soon will be. And the most latent examiners that are managers came from my generation. And they're all bailing out within a few years of each other, and there's a massive void, massive void. That's why those situations develop, and it scares us to death. That's why we're going to start another academy at the end of April. Because there's people, we could do 3 a year and never meet the need, not even come close. Criminal justice agencies and laboratories, they truly are in dire straits. And because of that, sometimes they push their young examiners a little bit too fast. So I'm going to give you a little bit of caution here too. Not just about, you know, kind of zipping it up and just learning what you can from where you're working, but also about the pressures that might come. When you leave here, you are a loaded gun, and that's the way you need to treat it. And you got to make sure that nobody, I mean no one, other than you, can be allowed to pull your trigger on a case. Nobody can affect your identification. Nobody can affect your conclusion. I don't care if it's your laboratory director, your sheriff, your chief, your investigator, the attorneys of the victim. You cannot allow anybody to pull your trigger. Only you, and only then, when you're sure that it's not going to end up being another benign Dandridge. So I sure am glad you come to speak to y'all, because I think that'll be hovering over you the rest of your career, and I hope it does. So if you're, you know, thinking that when you get back you're going to be Top Gun and all that kind of good stuff, just remember that pride goeth before the fall. For all of us. For all of us. If you find yourself struggling, having a hard time making a conclusion, come on, who can you call? Each other. Y'all got really close last 20 weeks. I know it and you know it. But it's not just them. You can call me, John, and Matt, and everybody else in the RS&A company, because you are now part of the RS&A family. We will always have your back. Always. Since I mentioned Top Gun and everything, I'm going to close with that. Some of you may be old enough to remember it, some of you not. I don't know. But in the movie Top Gun, Viper, if you remember who he was the training captain, flight instructor. He said to Tom Cruise, right after Tom Cruise finished his training and was fixed to be deployed to an aircraft carrier, he said, "Maverick, you'll get a partner when you get to this ship. If not, call me. I'll fly with you." And we will. Congratulations, and may God bless.
Thank you, Ron. I will say that this past week during finals exam, we did have one question that talked about the first American fingerprint lecture, and the students, I think some of them did get a little confused between Ron Smith at Camp Shelby and Moses. All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce our class leader, Wynn Vu, with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, for her comments. Wynn.
Thank you, John. John originally wanted me to sing the national anthem, but I didn't want to confuse you guys and make you think it was a Beyonce concert. All right. First and foremost, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the brave men and women of the armed forces who are serving and who have served our country. Okay. Now I'd like to welcome friends and families and thank you all for being here to celebrate with us. A special thanks to our agencies and families for granting us the opportunity to be here. This is for you guys, my friends. Can you guys believe that we came to Camp Shelby a little over 5 months ago, and now it's time to leave? We left our homes and loved ones back in Arizona, Louisiana, Florida, New York, Colorado, Virginia, Oklahoma, and New Mexico to embark on this journey in Mississippi with one goal, and that was to learn how to become a great forensic latent print examiner. I still remember like it was yesterday, all of us sitting in that classroom for the first time as strangers. Little did we know we'd become the best of friends and now lifelong friends. Words cannot express how grateful I am to have met you all and for doing this with me. There were weeks where it got a little more intense and challenging, but with the emotional support from each other, it was definitely easier to make it through this academy together. I truly believe that no other class after this will be able to top this group. We are pretty awesome. And I'm gonna miss you guys like crazy. But to show you how awesome my friends are, I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of them, and I'm going to do so by handing out class superlatives. When I call your name, please come up to accept your award. This first person I'd like to present, and I'm truly honored to be able to work with her back in Colorado, Kaylee. Please come up and accept your award for most likely to use the word rad on the witness stand. This next guy's super funny, but you wouldn't know it unless you're listening aggressively. Greg Simonson, you win for most likely to say something hilarious under your breath. This next person, she's the sunshine in our classroom, and she wins for most likely to adopt a midget. Tammy, come up here. This next gentleman is very book savvy and knows everything there is to know about spatial relationships and fingerprints. Bill Gagne, most likely to add a 6-prong to Dalbert. Next up, the king of karaoke, whose voice is like a combination of Macy Gray and a dying goose. It's beautiful to me though. Big Greg, come up and accept your award for most likely to skip leg day. Next up is our class appointed IT guy and the life of the party. Mike, you win for best cases of gustatory sweats. Come up here. And up next to present the second half of the superlative, he's stronger than he looks, he's tall but he can't dunk. And although he loses 90% of his bets, he'll most likely win a twerking battle. Aaron, get up here.
Well, I don't have anything anything special to say like she did. Okay. The next award goes to Caitlin for most likely to own stock in Icy. Okay, this next award, I was actually had the pleasure of being a witness to the reason for this award, and it was quite fantastic. It goes to Dylan for best 135-pound back squat. The next award goes to Crystal, or Little Mama, for most likely to give birth to a latent print examiner. Our next award, she was not able to be here with us today, but it goes to Liz as most likely to tell a lie and get away with it. This next award goes to someone who is still searching for that special someone. And I know she'll find him one day, because her award is most likely to go tumbling down a hill after a guy named Jack. She goes to Jill. Okay, now this next award has a special place in my heart because I was very, very involved in the circumstances that led to this award. It goes to Katie for biggest mark left on Camp Shelby. 2 words, mud and the Nighthawk. This next award goes to Courtney for most likely to host an unexpected Netflix party. And the last but not least goes to Win for most likely to wreck a tank at Camp Shelby.
Aaron and I put a lot of thought into those superlatives, so I hope you guys enjoyed them. Okay, on behalf of my classmates, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the entire staff of Ron Smith and Associates for putting together this academy and let you know how honored we are to be the very first class to successfully complete the National Latent Print Examiner Training Academy. How do you like that, Ron? Is that good for courtroom? Thanks for providing us with top-notch instructions and skills that we can take back to our agencies. We wouldn't have been able to do any of this without the help of our instructors. So I'd like to take a moment to thank each of our instructors, and by doing so, I'd like to tell you a little bit about them as well, by quoting some of the things they've said, and I'll need a little help from my friends. So Dylan, Greg, and Aaron, will you please come up here? First instructor I'd like to thank is Mike Campbell. He was our instructor from the Midwest, and he taught us that when evaluating a print, you must ask yourself,
Yeah, is it is or is it ain't?
Matt Marvin, the Colorado native, who gave us a lot of acronyms to help us remember key points in latent prints, one of which included the pits and the bits. When something wasn't right, he'd laugh and say,
Crap.
Next is Eric Zabinski, the New England magician of photography and digital imaging. Taught us how to turn prints that look like garbage into beautiful and clear prints for comparison. He was given the name
The Great Zabinski.
and his magic word was
Vignette.
Ron Smith, the mastermind behind this entire organization. A man with a lot of wisdom, knowledge, experience, and quotes. Where do we begin with his quotes? I'll just let Greg say something here.
Go on with your bad self. And smile for the jurors.
Next is Kelly Counts. He taught us how to process items of evidence such as a hooker purse, and that when you are heating a surface, the best way to test the temperature of an iron is to touch it and make sure it's hot like ooh, but not like ooh. John Black taught us that something in the milk ain't creamy and the juice ain't worth the squeeze. I'm still trying to work those southern phrases into a casual conversation. But he also taught us that Frankie G is Charles Darwin's cousin. Brian Dew always reminded us to run the Regis and taught us how to dance the do-wiggle. A dance I'm sure he wasn't doing when the Carolina Panthers painfully lost to the Denver Broncos. Go Broncos! Mike Jordahl was an avid CrossFitter, which is always cool in my book. He also had a pretty cool story about how he got the scar on his right index finger. Too bad Courtney never heard the story.
Not as far.
Last but not least, John Bird, AKA the Birdman. For without him, there would be no academy. And without him, we wouldn't know that a vestige area in a palm is also known as the beehive in the freak area. And I'm not sure if you ever noticed or caught on, but we as a class had a signal to inform each other whenever he was in the building, and that was... There are a few other people I'd like to thank, and that is the friends we've made on base, some of which include the fitness center staff for opening the gym no second sooner or later than 6 a.m., and for closing at 5:15 when the sign says 5:30. Bless their hearts. Thank you to the South and Eastgate Guards for welcoming us with friendly faces, unless they were bored and made us pull over for random car searches. Bless their hearts. Thank you to the staff of the Chow Hall for keeping us fed even though the food gave us bubble guts. Bless their hearts. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Colonel Sean Klein, whose skills in racquetball is slightly below average. But for being a good friend to us here at Camp Shelby, we're really bummed that we're gonna miss the Dents and Scratch sale with you at your favorite store next Thursday. But we'll be thinking about you. Finally, thank you to SRPSI for hosting us and for doing your absolute best to make us comfortable these past 5 months. Special thanks to Captain Stewart, Miss Nancy, and Miss Katie, who went the extra mile for us. We truly appreciated it. And I know it may seem a bit cliche to close out this speech with an inspiring quote, but considering what my friends and I have experienced these past 5 months, it's only fitting to leave you with a very popular quote from the talented and wise actor, rapper, Ice Cube, from the movie Friday. I'd like to say, bye, Felicia!
Connected.
Fall is here, hear the yell, back to school, ring the bell, brand new shoes, walking blues, climb the fence, books and pens, I can tell that we are gonna be friends. I can tell that we are gonna be friends. around and look at all the bugs we found. Safely walk to school without a sound. Safely walk to school without a sound. Here we are, no one else. We walk to school all by ourselves. There's dirt on our uniforms from chasing all the ants and worms. We clean up and now it's time to learn. We clean up and now it's time to learn. Numbers, letters, learn to spell, nouns and books and show and tell. Playtime we will throw the ball back to class through the hall. Teacher marks our hide against the wall. Teacher marks our hide against the wall. We don't notice any time pass. We don't notice anything. We sit side by side in every class. Teacher thinks that I sound funny, but she likes the way you sing. Tonight I'll dream while I'm in bed, when silly thoughts go through my head about the bugs and alphabet. And when I wake tomorrow I'll bet that you and I will walk together again. I can tell that we are gonna be friends. Yes, I can tell that we are gonna be friends.
What I want, you've got, and it might be hard to handle, but like a flame that burns a candle, the candle feeds the flame. Yeah, yeah, what I got, full stock of thoughts and dreams to scatter, when you pull them all together, and how I can't explain. Oh yeah, well, you make my dreams come true. On a night when bed dreams become a screamer, when the messing with the dreamer, I can laugh it in the face, twist and shout my way out and wrap yourself around me, 'cause I ain't the way you found me, and I'll never be the same. Oh yeah, well, 'cause you make my dreams come true. I'm down on my daydream. Oh, that sleepwalk should be over by now. I know. Yeah, yeah. You make my dreams come true. Oh yeah. I'm waiting for you, girl. Oh yeah. You make my dreams come true. Me, you, me. I'm waiting for you, girl. Oh, life, you make my dreams come true. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm waiting for you, make my dreams.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, ooh, yeah. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you. Oh, find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, ooh, yeah, yeah. You'll always have my shoulder when you cry. I'll never let go, never say goodbye. You know you can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, ooh, you can count on me 'cause I can count on you.
They really did go to class, I promise. I can say this as well. There was never a dull moment with these guys as a group. As you can see, they were here to learn about latent fingerprints, but in that process, they had fun, made friendships that will last throughout their careers and beyond. So thank you, William. All right, now for the unveiling of the ceiling tile. As each class for the Southern Regional Public Safety Institute, they leave their mark of their time spent at the Academy by designing a ceiling tile. With this being the first session of the National Latent Fingerprint Examiner Training Academy, we wanted to leave our mark as well. Jill Capistrant was our resident artist and was asked to sketch and paint the class tile for us. So Jill, if you would come forward, please. All right, now for the presentation of diplomas. Class, if you would please stand. If any of you family members would like to get pictures, now would be a good time to move up front as they start moving forward. First, Liz Anderson from Onondaga County Forensic Science Center in New York. Liz could not be with us today because of an emergency, but we wanted to make sure that she was honored for her hard work with the rest of the graduates here today. Accepting the diploma on her behalf will be Crystal Burtz. Next, Dylan Barber, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Florida. Burt's, Citrus County Sheriff's Department in Florida. Jill Capistrant, self-sponsor, Virginia. Katie Casper, Tulsa Police Department, Oklahoma. William Gagne, New Mexico Department of Public Safety, New Mexico. Kaylee Henson, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Colorado. And starting in the second row, Mike Horton, Oklahoma City Police Department, Oklahoma. Tammy Logic, Gilbert Police Department, Arizona. Aaron Lee, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Florida. Greg Rorta, Casa Grande Police Department, Arizona. Greg Simonson, Oklahoma City Police Department, Oklahoma. Courtney Sanin, Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Department, Louisiana. Caitlin Vollenweider, self-sponsor, Louisiana. Wynn Boot, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Colorado. If you would, please remain standing for dismissal. I know these students were ready to go home when last week I walked into the classroom and caught a couple of them doing the whip and nay-nay. So I knew there was time for them to go home. But the time has come to go. And I know although it is bittersweet for some, and as Wynn said, mostly bitter, I know they'll miss the relationships that they have built since being here at Camp Shelby. After all, these will be lifelong friendships that they will share throughout their career. Class, if you would, please come forward. I present to you the Ron Smith & Associates 2015-2016 National Latent Print Examiner Training Academy First Session graduates. We would also like to ask all our guests to join us in the reception right outside the double doors in the back. There's also, in the back left corner, there's a place for people to take pictures that we have set up, so please take advantage of that as well. Thank you all for coming.
Thank